This video and all of its contents, including any opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only and is not intended in any way as a substitute for professional services and consultation from a licensed therapist, doctor, attorney, or other licensed professional service provider. Each person must make their own life decisions, and those decisions are theirs. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha, your favorite channel on YouTube for these kind of stories. And today we've got another great story for you. And the theme I want to have you watch out for is this. Even if it happened just that one time, in quotations, and she's truly sorry, in quotations, once cheating has occurred, the relationship is over. Now, I'm going to get some feedback, I'm sure, from some guys in the community that are going to say, no, that's not true, FYA, because my wife cheated on me years ago and I'm still with her, or my girlfriend cheated on me 2 years ago and we got back together and we're happy now. And that might be the case, but let me just tell you one thing. The original relationship you had with her did end when you found out she cheated. The reason being is the trust is gone and all that original caring you had for her is gone. Now, you may have rebuilt something different, but the original relationship, the true, strong relationship, it is gone forever. Now, with that, let's get into today's story. And you can see the title coming right up on your screen. This woman says, I spent quality time with a neighbor in his truck, and now my husband wants a divorce. Will he ever love me again? And I'm going to answer that question for you, original poster. The answer is no. He will never love you like he once did before you cheated. So let's get into it now. This story dates all the way back to August of 2020. She starts off by saying, I cheated on my awesome husband. Now, I want to stop right there. I can't stand it in these stories when these cheaters use adjectives like awesome and perfect and fantastic to describe their spouses. And then they go off and cheat on them. If they're so awesome, why would you have to cheat on them? It just doesn't make any sense. She says, I did this with a neighbor a few weeks ago. This is something I regret and I'm truly sorry for. Let me start out at the beginning, and I'm only going to use false names to keep our identity private. My husband, Jesse, age 48, and I, Debbie, age 44, have been married 24 years and have 3 adult children. What are you doing cheating on your husband after 24 years? Oh, my goodness. We all live in Vegas. Uh-oh. My husband works for a company that supports gaming machines, and I worked in the casino food and beverage industry. My husband has been with his company for 23 years and does really well, earning over 6 figures. Like my husband, I too was a loyal employee and worked for a great company for 10 years until I was laid off. This sickness, or whatever you call it, basically wiped out our industry, and it's just starting to crawl back to life, but many places will never reopen. Now, keep in mind, this was back in 2020 when the worldwide sickness, as she referred to it, had businesses and companies shut down, and a lot of those companies, especially ones like in the restaurant industry, many of them didn't reopen. She says, it's not like we need my income to live, but I'd love to be back working now, as it would help to get my mind off the mess I created. Also, I may need my income if my husband decides to divorce me, and she has 3 frowny faces there. Here's what happened. As you know, Vegas was in a lockdown from March through June. As a result, I was laid off in March, but my husband's company kept him steadily employed except for the 2 weeks when everything was shut down. I was fine with all of this for the first few weeks, but like everyone else, I started getting antsy, being confined to the house. The isolation and not being able to go anywhere was driving me crazy. As soon as the casinos started to partially reopen in June, I started going out to the locals casinos around where we live to fill time. She said, I generally go right after my morning walk and stay there all morning, then return home in time to eat a late lunch. I had a nice little routine going and it was fun. Now, here's something I want to put out there to all the men. If you got a woman who is a gambler, you need to nip that in the bud, because just like alcohol, just like drugs, gambling is an addiction and it can drain your bank accounts. Now, this is how fate sometimes deals you a bad hand, or at least dangles temptation in front of you at a time when you are weak and vulnerable. One day I drove across the valley to a popular casino I had never been to before. While there, I ran into a neighbor. Call him Nate. Enter the picture, Nate, and we know what's going to happen eventually here with Nate. Unfortunately for him, his company permanently closed down and went out of business just a few months after the lockdown. We got to talking, and like me, he started going out to the casinos to fill time and to clear his head. We talked briefly and then headed into the casino. It was his first time there as well. I saw a type of slot that I wanted to play, and Nate said he'd try his luck on them as well, and sat 2 chairs down from me. The machines we chose were hot, and we both started winning. Each of us were up over $200 and played those same machines all morning until we decided to cash out and grab something to eat. I packed a cooler full of fruit, cheese, lunch meat, power bars, and other snacks, as I planned to stay there much of the day. With the casino only having limited food options available, I invited Nate to join me for lunch at my car. So she's already stepped over the line, folks. She's already stepped over the line. He asked if I was sure, and I told him absolutely. We went back to my car and I opened the tailgate and we stood back there talking and eating. Standing up felt great after sitting for so long in front of the machines. After we ate, we took a walk around the little downtown area near the casino to look at all the empty streets and closed stores. So now she's taking a walk with this guy. It was truly depressing. We then headed back into the casino where we gambled for a couple more hours, sticking near each other. While we were leaving, Nate asked if I was going to do it all again tomorrow. And I said I was, but I didn't know where. He suggested we come back to the same casino, since it was so lucky for us and we had such an enjoyable day. I said, okay, sounds good. He said, I'll bring lunch this time and we could eat at my car tomorrow. I said, okay, that's a deal. Driving home, I called Jesse. Now remember, Jesse's her husband, and told him about my day. I told him I just ran into Nate at the casino, and then he and I just went on chatting for my entire 40-minute drive home. I didn't give him any specific details of my day, just that I ran into Nate. Of course you didn't give him any specific details because you know what you had in mind. I know now from doing online research that this was the point where I officially started cheating on my husband. I'm crying as I'm typing this. I feel so foolish and selfish now. The next day, we met at the same casino and had lunch at his truck. Along with the food, Nate brought a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses to celebrate our winnings from the previous day. At the end of the lunch, as we walked back into the casino, Nate kissed me, and I didn't resist. We got into the casino and started playing slots again, sitting side by side, but our hormones got the best of us. Lady, you are disgusting. She says we ended up inside the big back seat of his truck a short time later, where we spent the next hour with each other. Again, I feel so ashamed and disgusted with myself just typing this. After we finished, Nate wanted me to go back into the casino, and I said, no, I'm going home. I told him this was a big mistake and we cannot see each other again. Nate kept trying to explain to me how no one would ever find out as long as we just continued to meet up in the morning at locations far from our homes and didn't communicate any other way. Now, I've been seeing this in a number of stories I've been reading where these cheaters are getting wise to the fact that most of the time when they get caught by somebody seeing their smartphone or from some text or some email they sent. So a lot of these people now are going the old-fashioned way and just meeting up places or passing physical notes instead of communicating with new technology. And that's what it sounds like he was trying to propose here. She says, I told him absolutely not, gave him a friendly hug, and headed home. I wanted so much to hear Jesse's voice at this point, so I called him and we talked as I drove home. Now listen to this. This is what really disgusts me about this story. She says, when I got home, I took the longest bath I've ever taken. That night, I cooked Jesse his favorite meal, dressed in his favorite mini sundress, and here's the part that really got me, and made sure I took really good care of him in bed. So she just used her body and got totally crudted out by this Nate. Now she's bringing that mess back and just exposing her husband to it. That is totally disrespectful and disgusting. Ugh. This was not uncommon for us, and Jesse knows whenever I cook his favorite food and wear a revealing outfit, he's going to be getting something really, really special for dessert. I've been doing this for him for the entire 25 years we've been together, and it never gets old or boring. I can honestly say I'm more in love and attracted to him now than ever before. Now, who out there believes that? When she just did it with this other guy hours before, now she's saying she's more attracted to her husband than ever before. That is just BS, lady. BS. Everything was going great for the next 2 weeks, and I thought I had put the terrible mistake I made with Nate behind me, never to be discovered. Then one afternoon, Jesse sent me a text stating he'd be working overtime and wouldn't be home until very late. He said not to cook anything as he'd just pick something up. I asked him to call me when he was free or on his way home, but he never did, which should have been a red flag for me as this was totally unlike him. When he eventually got home at 8 o'clock, he had my brother-in-law and his wife, my sister-in-law, with him. Nothing out of the ordinary, as we hung out frequently and are all best friends. When they entered the house, I knew something was wrong, so I asked if everything was okay. Jesse asked me to sit down and said he wanted his brother and sister-in-law with him as witnesses. I didn't know what he was about to say, but my heart sunk into my stomach. He then proceeded to tell me he had met with Nate's wife earlier, and she told him everything about my affair with Nate. I asked him, what did she tell you? Jesse calmly told me to not play dumb. He said he has photos and video proof of the affair on his phone, and with that he pulled up a photo of Nate and I kissing outside of his truck. With that I started crying and said I could explain. I said it was not an affair, it was a single mistake and I was so sorry. Jesse basically told me in so many words that to him it didn't matter if it was one time or 1,000 times. Our marriage was over. Hearing this, I nearly passed out and put my head down on the table and started crying, while my husband, brother-in-law, and sister-in-law just sat there watching me wallow in agony for 10 plus minutes without comforting me. Eventually, I gathered the strength to stop crying and lifted my head. When I did, Jesse told me he wanted me to leave. I begged him not to do this, but he insisted. I told him I didn't want to leave our home or leave his side. He told me if I didn't leave, that he would be leaving, and the next time I would hear from him would be through his attorney. Since this was all my fault, I didn't want him to have to leave the house, so I asked him, if I leave, where do you want me to go? He said he didn't care where I went, he just wanted to be away from me. At this point, I was hoping my brother-in-law or sister-in-law would speak up and offer to have me stay at their house, but they didn't, and along with my husband just stared at me with disgust. I went to the bedroom and packed a few things. I came out and told Jesse I was leaving and asked if I could come back tomorrow. He said yes, but not until after he gets home from work. I went and stayed with one of my friends from work. She's become a good friend and a wonderful confidant. We stayed up most of the night talking about what I'd done. Now listen to this. She was a big help, as unfortunately she has experience dealing with such situations. She too had a one-night stand. Her husband found out and took her back. They stayed together for 8 months but ended up divorcing. So these cheaters kind of attract each other, as you see in a lot of these stories. She says, side note, he recently got married to one of their former neighbors. We both think he was seeing her while married, but she doesn't have proof. And again, here's another thing about these cheaters. They always, because they're cheaters, they think everybody else is a cheater. The next afternoon, I called my husband and we talked briefly. We arranged to meet at our house at 6 o'clock. When I arrived, my brother and sister-in-law were once again with him. When I saw them, I asked if we could meet in private, but Jesse insisted he wanted them there as witnesses. I told him I would never do anything to hurt him. With that, he just gave me the evil eye stare. My husband proceeds to tell me he would be divorcing me and had already secured an attorney and that I should do the same. So just within 24 hours, this husband went out and talked to and secured an attorney. Man, he's moving quickly, and I have to tip my hat to him. With this, I again burst out crying and nearly passed out. He said we could both live in the house until it was final, but as roommates and not as husband and wife. I pleaded, but he was hard-headed and unmovable. He then told me he wanted me to find some place to stay for the next week, as he needed to clear his mind and didn't want me around. He then proceeded to tell me that he already met with our 3 kids earlier in the day and told them everything. He said they all offered to let me couch surf, so I had a place to stay if I had the guts to face them. I asked him why he told them without me, and he said they need to know the reason why we're divorcing. I said we are not divorcing and that I will not sign anything. I told him we can fix this and that I love him more than life. He just told me he's done and said something to the effect of, it was a great run, but now it's done, or something antagonizing like that. So this guy's already kind of making light of the situation, which is really unusual. That night, I stayed at my oldest daughter's apartment. My son and youngest daughter met us there, and the 3 of them yelled at me until 11 o'clock. They finally let up, and we hugged it out, and I agreed to spend 2 to 3 nights with each of them until their dad lets me come back home. While they were angry and disappointed, they want their dad and I to work things out. Well, of course they do. They're your kids. I'm sitting here on my daughter's couch while she's at work, and I thought I would write this post to ask for help. Have any of you been in my situation? Specifically, I'd like to hear from women who've been married for years and had a one-night stand. How did you cope? Did your marriage survive? What did you do to make things right? Thanks for reading, Debbie. So that's her original post. And now she's got a same-day update. So this is again from August 10th of 2020. And she's just answering some common questions, I guess, that she was getting. She says, first, I have never cheated before and will never cheat again. Next, she says, I do not have a gambling problem, nor do I have any other addictions. She says, I have not talked to Nate and don't ever plan to. I do want to apologize to his wife, though. Next, she says, I don't know how Nate's wife got the pictures and video. The next point she makes here is she says, I did submit to an at-home STD test and will share the results with my husband. And then finally, she says, yes, Jesse is definitely the father of my 3 kids. Don't even go there, people. That's ridiculous. And now for a few responses that she got from the community. The first one's from a woman. She says, I was once in your shoes, but in my case, it was a 2-week affair that my husband discovered. He took me back and basically treated me like an S toy and house servant for 6 weeks until he presented me with divorce papers. That was 3 years ago, and I still miss him to this day, but he has moved on and moved far away. Like you, I'm crying just writing this. The next one's from a guy. He said, my wife cheated on me on a cruise. She went on with her sister and BFF. Boy, oh boy, I bet that's sister and BFF or something as well. This happened 4 months ago, and she confessed right when she got back. I've stayed with her, and she's done everything right since then, but it's been a living HELL for me. I can't bring myself to have relations with her, and I've now decided to divorce, but haven't told her yet. It's over. And then finally, here's one from another woman. She says, I had a one-night stand after a night of drinking with friends. So I'll tell you what, these girls' nights do not, if you're married or even if you're in a committed relationship with a woman, put the kibosh on any of these girls' nights out. They always end up eventually in trouble. This woman says, my husband caught me in the act. Oh boy, that was 4 years ago. We're still together, but just roommates. Here's another one that's just roommates at this point. No intimacy since. As part of our agreement, I gave him a one-sided open marriage. He's been in a relationship with his high school girlfriend since just after my situation. She says, I accept this as I love him. And she's still hoping. Lady, let me tell you something. Just divorce and move on. This guy doesn't want any part of you. If he hasn't touched you in 4 years and he's out nailing his high school girlfriend, he wants no part of you. He's just torturing you, keeping you around. And now we're at a point in this video where I want to encourage you, if you like what you're hearing, hit that like button. That'll help this video get seen by people all over the world. Now let's get back to our story. And now she's got a series of updates. The first one from December 22nd of 2020. So this is like 4 months later. She says, sorry, I've not updated sooner, but as you can imagine, I've had a lot going on. First, I want to start off by telling you some great news. Jesse and I are still married. Who's that great news for? You, not for Jesse. It's been difficult, and I gave up a lot to convince him to stay, but in late October, he finally agreed, and we just signed all the paperwork. Now, here's where all of you are going to think I'm crazy. Be mindful that I was desperate at this point and would do anything to keep my husband and our marriage, which mean more to me than anything. I don't think I could survive or would want to survive without Jesse. There would be no point in doing so, except for my kids, who I also love dearly. Now, for what I gave up, she says, be nice. I signed a post-nuptial agreement with my husband that basically reduces my share of our assets to 25% versus 50% if we divorce. This does not include real estate. That would still be divided 50-50, but everything else, savings, stocks, 401k, and all of our other assets would be split 75-25 in the divorce with no alimony, none at all. So what she's saying is, I gave up 25% of everything except for real estate if my husband will stay with me. The only stipulation is that we stay married for at least 1 year and live together. As part of the agreement, I also gave Jesse a permanent, one-sided, him only, open relationship. I tried rationalizing with him on this for just a free pass or for 3 months, etc., since I only had a one-night stand, but he wouldn't go for it. He told me it's forever or we don't have an agreement. It took me weeks to find a good attorney to represent me, as none of them wanted anything to do with my agreement once I explained what I wanted. I finally did, and now it's all in place. How have things gone between Jesse and I? In a word, cold. Very, very cold. We are basically roommates, where both parties love each other, but one party, Jesse, truly dislikes the other. I will not say hate, because in Jesse's own words, he said he doesn't hate me. He just doesn't like me anymore. Since the discovery, he comes home late, doesn't spend time with me, and doesn't let me do anything for him. He will not even eat anything I prepare. In fact, he will not eat anything in an open package. He said he just doesn't trust me with anything. That's just crazy talk, as I would never do anything to harm him. I love him more than I love myself, more than life itself. He's my world, but he just can't see past the stupid mistake I made. One mistake in 25 years, and he's willing just to throw me away like a candy wrapper. I'm ranting now, as I'm just so full of emotion. I just want my man back like before. As for intimacy, there's been none. No kissing, no hugging or cuddling, and we sleep in separate rooms. Now listen to this. She says he did allow me to give him a blank back in September, and you can imagine what that is, but insisted on wearing a condom. There was no intimacy, just the act. After he finished, he just left and went back to our master and left me alone in the guest room where I'm staying. No kiss or thank you, babe, or nothing. Now for the question you're probably asking. Has he used his open marriage pass? I don't know. I don't think so, and of course I hope he never does, as it will destroy me mentally. I know that sounds selfish, but if he ever does have relations with another woman, I will lose my mind. He's my man, and mine only, and I will do everything to keep it that way. That's all I've got for now. Please send me your thoughts, as I can't wait to read your responses. I know some of you are going to think I'm nuts, but my husband is my world, and I will sacrifice everything and do anything to keep him. Debbie. And now we're going to move to a few of the responses she got to her update. The first one is from a woman. She says, now listen to this woman. She says, "Why are you torturing yourself? Give him the divorce. He's acting passive aggressive, and that's not healthy. Has he always been like this? Yes, you made a mistake, a single mistake in 25 years. And oh, by the way, there was an international illness going on." So this woman is saying, well, you've got an excuse because there was an international illness going on. That's not an excuse to cheat people. Does he take that into consideration? You can do better, or better yet, you can be great on your own. So this woman sounds like she's definitely a member of the FU men movement. Now, here's another one from a woman. She says, "I feel your pain, as I was once in your shoes. I cheated on my husband with my ex-husband just one time." Nobody believes that, lady. You cheated on your current husband with your ex-husband and you only did it once? My husband wanted to divorce me, but I begged and gave him an open marriage. He then started an 8-month relationship with a woman from his work who was also in an open marriage. They ended their relationship last year, and now I've got him back, she says. I got him back. Hang in there. Oh, these things are just so convoluted. And then the final one here is from a man. He said, "Cue the sad music. Your marriage is over, Debbie, and you can't get it back. You destroyed it, and the best thing to do is move on. My wife did something similar, and she did everything to keep me around, but I was done. We divorced, and I did date her for 7 months after, until I met the woman who is now my wife." So this guy's saying, I divorced my wife, but then I went back and dated her. So he had kind of like a friends with benefits. It sounds like your husband has the same plan. Oh boy, I'll tell you what, again, very convoluted here. Now, here's the final update from October 3rd of 2021. This is almost a whole year later. She says, "It's been a while since I updated here, and I've gotten so many requests, so I've come back to let you know what's going on in my life. My marriage didn't survive my mistake, and Jesse and I divorced. Everything was made final back on August 17th. After 4 months of living like roommates with no intimacy, Jesse sat me down one day for the talk. He said while he still loves me and always will, he no longer is in love with me and doesn't like me. He said he wanted to start dating other women, but doesn't want to while we're married, even though I've given him my approval and have an agreement for him to do so. He told me he just can't. He said he just wants to end things now so we can split things 50-50 and go our separate ways." She says, "I tried everything to convince him otherwise, but he didn't move. It was a terrible time and I fell into a very dark place, but Jesse helped me through it. Once I agreed to the divorce and started the process, he was relieved. No longer under pressure." Now listen to what happens here. No longer under pressure, he started talking to me more and spending more time with me, but only as friends. We both agreed to sell the house before our divorce was final, and it sold in 6 days back in March. After the sale, we secured a 6-month lease on a new luxury apartment, which expires on October 1st. We live together and have gotten along great. I feel like we are kids again. So the guy divorces her, or is in the process of the divorce here, it looks like, and they sell their house, and yet they go get an apartment together. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Being away from our old neighborhood has been liberating for both of us, as it was awkward living there, as you can imagine. Regarding Nate and his wife, they divorced too, and Nate moved to Laughlin. Now, Laughlin is a little town south of Las Vegas on the Colorado River, which also has casinos. She said, and he is working in a store in a casino down there. I did get the chance to apologize to Nate's wife in person. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I was so nervous, I couldn't speak, but she made me feel at ease and quickly accepted my apology. It turns out Nate had done this before, more than once. Also, he's a recovering alcoholic and gambler. She says the reason she caught us on film is that she suspected Nate was back gambling and drinking again and hired a private investigator to follow him around for 3 days. So this Nate was a total Chad who was a gambler. He was a drinker. He was obviously fooling around with the ladies. Unbelievable. And this woman fell for it. The affair, along with Nate's continued alcohol and gambling problems, enabled her to secure full custody of their daughters, ages 13 and 14. For this, she was actually grateful. Wow, what a mess. How did I fall for someone like that? Now back to Jesse and I. As I said, since moving and divorcing, we've been getting closer. We're back to sharing meals and even went on a couple of dates with each other since moving to the apartment. Jesse, what are you doing? Then, this past Sunday, we were intimate again. It just happened spontaneously and was by far the best I've ever had, and I know Jesse was very satisfied as well. He made it clear to me that we're not back together and are only dating, and I'm just fine with that. It's such a rush. I feel like I'm 19 again and I get butterflies like when we first met. I'm on a natural high that is so intoxicating I can't describe it. Now, one complication. Jesse bought a house out in Pahrump, about 60 miles away from Las Vegas. He wanted to get away from the hustle and bustle of Vegas and move to a place with a small town feel and conservative values. I was hoping he'd offer to let me move in with him, but he hasn't. I asked him if he would be okay if I moved out to Pahrump too, and he said that would be fine. I've looked around town, but there are very few apartment options, so I'm considering buying a used RV. Jesse's new home has 3 acres and has 2 spots with full RV hookups located about 200 feet from the house. He said I could park there if I chose to do so, but would need to enter into a lease agreement and pay rent to him, which I'm fine with. Jesse, what are you doing? She's your ex-wife for a reason. There are plenty of RV spots all around Pahrump. You should not have this woman living on your property. He also reminded me that this doesn't mean we're back together and that he plans to date other women and doesn't want me to be jealous. I told him I was fine with that, as I'm going to treat him so good, he's not going to want anyone else, she says with a big smiley face. Finally, to all the women in the community, in the comments, who have been criticizing my husband and saying he has toxic masculinity and things like that, please stop. This whole thing is 110% my fault. I own it and everything falls on me for what's happened. Finally, she says here, I'm just glad Jesse and the good Lord gave me a second chance at love and life. All the best to you, Debbie. Now, that's the end of the story, and let me just talk to Jesse here. Jesse, you did the right thing out of the gate. You took action. You move forward with a divorce. Now, where you've been making a mistake, and it's a huge mistake, is you're letting Debbie creep back into your life. First of all, after you got a divorce, or when you were in the process of the divorce and you sold the house, you moved into an apartment with her. Why didn't you just move to separate apartments and be on your way at that point? Why? Because you wanted to keep her around. Now you're moving to a different town, and instead of going out there and starting a new life for yourself, you're bringing her along, and oh, by the way, she's going to be living on your property. Either you want to keep her around as a friends with benefits just to torture her, which is not a good thing, or you're just looking to get back with her. And I really think in this case, it's the latter. Now, there hasn't been any updates on this story, and I don't know where things stand, but if I had to bet dollars and donuts on this thing, I would say he's probably got her living in that house again. They may not be married, but I think they're probably back together, acting as a couple, and probably using that RV to travel all around Nevada and California. So those are my thoughts on this story. Now tell me what you think. Would you have done and handled this situation like Jesse did, or would you have done something different? Tell us about it. Also, if you like this video, please hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this great channel. And I will talk to you on the next